cameras cut live to the studio, lights harsh and unyielding. Bouncing off the polished desk where two figures sat in tense silence. The air felt electric, charged with expectation, as if every viewer watching at home could feel the friction building on their screens. The debate had already begun, but it wasn't the usual back and forth. No, tonight would be different. Levin leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice cutting through the air like a blade. For the 18th time in less than 10 minutes, he interrupted. Jasmine Crockett. Each interruption was more audacious than the last. A deliberate attempt to dominate the conversation, to assert power. Gasps echoed through the small studio audience. Papers rustled nervously in the hands of aides, and the lights seemed to flicker with every jab. The tension was tangible, almost suffocating. Levin just interrupted Jasmine Crockett. 4. The 18th command. What she did next left the entire nation stunned. The commentator's voice rang out, barely containing disbelief. Social media feeds exploded instantly, tweets piling up in a flood of outrage. Clips of the interruptions began circulating, each cut sharper than the last. The hashtag Crockett.com started trending before anyone could blink, a digital chorus of shock and anticipation. Yet Jasmine remained composed. Her hands rested lightly on the table, her gaze steady, unbroken. The studio seemed to hold its breath as Levin's voice rose, a tidal wave of arrogance and condescension.
Ow.
Every attempt to shout over her, every smirk and pointed gesture only seemed to amplify the calm that radiated from her. Could see it in the audience, an instinctive admiration for someone who refused to be rattled, even under relentless assault. Whispers spread across the room, low but urgent. She's not even flinching. How is she so composed? Every interruption was meant to provoke a reaction, but the absence of one created a new kind of tension, a silent battle of wills that no one expected to witness. And then, as Levin leaned in for what he assumed would be the final, decisive interruption, the camera caught Jasmine's slight, deliberate intake of breath, a pause pregnant with power, control, and inevitability. The studio lights seemed to brighten as if spotlighting a moment that would be remembered. The nation watched, riveted, as the calm before the storm stretched impossibly long. No one had expected this. No one had predicted the quiet force that now held the room captive. And yet every viewer knew, deep down, that the honest reckoning was about to begin. But no one expected the calm response that would leave him speechless. The debate wasn't just another evening. On cable news, it was a collision of ideologies, personalities, and public perception. At the heart of the discussion was a topic that had consumed headlines for weeks: systemic inequality in policymaking, and the urgent call for voices in Congress that genuinely represented the marginalized and the overlooked. It was the kind of issue that could define careers, shift public opinion, and ignite social movements. Every word mattered. Every pause carried weight. Levin had built his career on domination. On air, he was a force of nature, sharp-tongued, relentless, and unafraid to bulldoze anyone who dared challenge him. Guests often left his shows bruised and silent, their arguments scattered by his aggressive style. The nation had grown accustomed to his method: speak loudly, interrupt frequently, overwhelm with rhetoric, and control the narrative before anyone else could respond. Tonight, he expected nothing different. He believed the outcome was predetermined: his voice, his rules, his control. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't just any guest. She carried with her the weight of history and the unshakable poise of someone who had navigated systemic barriers her entire life. As she leaned forward to make her first point, Levin cut in immediately, voice booming over hers. Her words, carefully measured and grounded in experience, were silenced mid-sentence, leaving only a ripple of murmurs from the audience. The spectators shifted in their seats, sensing the imbalance, feeling the injustice before it was even articulated. A collective empathy was forming, a quiet rooting for the calm, posed figure who refused to be cowed. The cameras panned across the room, capturing subtle reactions: the flicker of raised eyebrows, the tight grip of hands clutching notes, and the sudden pause in whispered side conversations. Each interruption wasn't just a tactical move. It was a statement of power, a test of endurance, a gauntlet thrown directly at Crockett. And yet, with each blocked attempt to speak, the tension only thickened, the stakes climbing higher. This wasn't a simple debate. It was a battlefield for credibility, for narrative control, for the very ideals that Crockett represented: representation, dignity, and the right to be heard. On social media, the feeds were already lighting up. Clips of Levin's aggressive interruptions circulated rapidly, sparking outrage and admiration in equal measure. Commentators dissected every second, Viewers debated in threads, and ordinary citizens felt the pulse of history being written in real time. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, each viewer aware that a defining moment was unfolding before their eyes. And yet, beneath the surface, a subtle undercurrent suggested something even more remarkable was about to happen. Levin believed he was steering the storm, but he hadn't accounted for the quiet strength that Crockett had cultivated through years of struggle, advocacy, and resilience. Her calm wasn't just a reaction, it was preparation, a silent counterweight. To his aggression, little did anyone know, the real lesson was about to unfold live on air. Every blocked sentence, every tense pause, every gasp from the audience was a piece of a larger story. This story would challenge assumptions, shift power dynamics, and reveal that true strength often arrives not with the loudest voice, but with the calmest conviction. Mark Levin's reputation preceded him like a shadow over every studio he entered. For decades, he had honed a persona that combined a sharp intellect with an unyielding, confrontational style, a mix that both captivated audiences and intimidated opponents. To millions of viewers, he was a master of debate, a voice that dissected policy with precision, and a figure whose charisma commanded attention. Yet behind that magnetic presence was a pattern that had become almost predictable: overwhelm, interrupt, dominate, and leave no room for dissent. His career was built on these confrontations. Guests who walked onto his shows often carried impressive, seasoned expertise and carefully prepared arguments. Yet one by one, many found themselves swallowed by Levin's relentless energy. He would cut off sentences, preempt points, or challenge credentials with a precision that felt surgical. The intimidation wasn't always overtight, was woven into the cadence of his voice, the sharpness of his gaze, the smug confidence that suggested, without question, that he was always in control. Some moments had already become infamous among media circles. A young congressman, attempting to discuss immigration policy, had been silenced mid-paragraph. His carefully chosen words lost under a barrage of interruptions and derisive commentary. A renowned academic had tried to present research on economic disparity only to be shut down repeatedly, forced to defend methodology instead of delivering insights. Levin's style left audiences both impressed and unsettled. They watched a battle of words that felt choreographed, almost theatrical, yet undeniably ruthless. Yet it wasn't just the interruptions that defined him. Levin's intimidation tactics extended beyond the live debate. He cultivated a presence that suggested omnipotence in discourse. Viral clips, sharply worded articles, and on-air monologues that framed him as the arbiter of truth. His charisma drew a devoted following, but his arrogance ensured that he rarely encountered someone willing to challenge him on equal footing. Intelligence and ego intertwined, creating a figure who often left his opponents unprepared not just for debate, but for the psychological pressure he wielded effortlessly. Contrast framed the man clearly when he spoke. Audiences saw brilliance and command, but beneath it lay an unshakable belief in his own invincibility. The line between confidence and hubris blurred, and many who underestimated him quickly learned the cost. Levin's very presence in a studio could shift the energy of the room, creating tension that even the most seasoned professionals felt. Immediately, every raised hand, every attempt to interject was met with a counter, a redirect, or a pointed rhetorical trap. It was a dance where he set the rhythm, and nearly all had no choice but to follow. But Levin's story was not only one of victories. It was a story defined by the absence of resistance. He had rarely encountered anyone who could maintain composure, who could absorb the weight of his verbal onslaught without faltering, and who could respond with the quiet strength that left his tactics powerless. His previous debates had reinforced the narrative. He was the storm, unchallenged, untouchable, a force that could bend any dialogue to his will. And then came the day Jasmine Crockett stepped onto the stage. Levin leaned in, expecting the familiar pattern, the interruption, the control, the dominance. He did not anticipate the calm, measured presence that awaited him. For the first time, the pattern faltered. The expected collapse did not occur, and a silent tension began to form. His usual arsenal: sharp questions, pointed attacks. The theatrical dismissal of his opponents met something it could not easily overcome. Levin had never met someone who could withstand his verbal onslaught, until now. Every smirk, every raised voice, every confident assertion was met with a poised silence that carried more weight than any retort. The audience sensed it instantly. The tide was shifting, and the man who had so often dictated the terms of debate might finally encounter resistance capable of challenging not just his arguments, but his dominance itself. The room, the cameras, the viewers at home all felt it. A storm was approaching, and it was not Levin who would control it. The history, the reputation, the calculated charisma of it hung in the balance. Ready to collide with a force he had never confronted before, Jasmine Crockett's story was never one of privilege or effortless ascent. Born into a world where opportunity often hinged on connections she did not possess, she learned early the weight of perseverance. Law books stacked high on a modest desk, late nights studying while the city around her buzzed with distractions, were the foundation of a mind determined to fight injustice. From those early days, Crockett understood that knowledge alone was insufficient. Discipline, focus, and resilience were what separated those who merely dreamed from those who could reshape reality. Her journey as a lawyer began in neighborhoods often overlooked, where she represented clients whose voices were marginalized and whose rights were routinely dismissed. Each case demanded not only intelligence but also the courage to challenge entrenched systems, to confront bias without hesitation, and to speak the truth, even when it made her unpopular. She learned to navigate the complex courtroom dynamics, where the stakes were both personal and societal, and where patience often mattered more than volume. It was in these crucibles of justice that her calm began to take shape, an unshakable poise that could absorb aggression and respond with precision. Moments of adversity punctuated her path. She faced skeptics who underestimated her due to her youth, gender, or background. Opportunities were delayed, doors closed unexpectedly, and critics questioned her every move. Yet Crockett's response was never retaliation or panic. It was preparation. She studied harder, spoke more intelligently, and refined her ability to listen with intent before responding. Every obstacle became a lesson in strategy, every criticism a chance to strengthen her resolve. The public victories she eventually won were built on countless unseen struggles, invisible to anyone watching the headlines, but instrumental in shaping the leader she had become. Her rise in politics mirrored this same trajectory of deliberate, disciplined growth. Entering a sphere dominated by seasoned power players required more than knowledge. It demanded composure under scrutiny, the ability to withstand relentless questioning, and the wisdom to distinguish between fleeting theatrics and genuine debate. Crockett approached her campaigns and her policy work with a quiet tenacity, building coalitions, advocating for underrepresented communities, and establishing herself as a voice of reason in a cacophony of spectacle. Each success was a testament to a mind capable of balancing intellect with empathy, ambition with principle. The same blend of skill and temperament was what prepared her for moments like tonight. In a room where cameras flashed and political titans wielded influence like weapons, Crockett's calm demeanor was her shield. She understood the rhythm of high-pressure debates, the timing of a pause, the impact of a measured word, the strategic power of letting others expose themselves through their aggression. Where others might have flinched, raised their voice, or rushed to respond, she had learned to anchor herself in clarity and purpose. The crowd, the cameras, the millions watching at home, they would all soon witness the power of disciplined calm in real time. There was an intangible quality to Crockett's presence that drew admiration even before she spoke. It was a combination of intelligence and empathy, confidence and humility, courage and restraint. Viewers instinctively recognized that she was not just reacting, she was analyzing, anticipating, and preparing for the pivotal moments that could define not only the debate, but also public perception and political history itself. Each interruption she had weathered in her career had trained her for this exact confrontation, giving her the ability to respond with clarity where others would falter. Her personal journey, though marked by struggle and skepticism, was inextricably linked to her public persona. Each courtroom victory, each legislative success, each moment spent advocating for justice had built a reservoir of calm, resilience, and tactical brilliance. This was a woman who had learned that true power rarely shouted. It listened, it calculated, and it struck with precision when the moment demanded. Her story resonated because it was not only political, it was profoundly human. It's an example of dignity forged in the crucible of adversity, a reminder that courage under fire was both rare and transformative. And as Crockett prepared to enter the debate, standing across from a figure whose reputation for dominance had intimidated countless others, the significance of her journey became clear. Every struggle, every disciplined hour of preparation, every moment of measured resilience led to this point. She was not just ready, She was poised to redefine what strength and leadership look like in real time. The tension in the studio was palpable, the audience at home leaning forward in anticipation. And when the debate began, the stage was set for a showdown no one would forget. The debate had barely begun when the first interruption came, a sharp, cutting interjection from Levin as Crockett tried to outline her opening point. "With all due respect, Congresswoman, that's not accurate," he snapped, voice booming over hers. The audience flinched collectively, papers rustling as if the room itself were unsettled. Crockett paused, eyes steady, before resuming in a measured tone with respect. The data clearly shows her words were calm but deliberate, asserting authority without raising her voice. By the fifth interruption, the tension was almost tangible. Levin leaned forward aggressively, pointing to a chart as he spoke over her. "You're missing the bigger picture. It's a complete misrepresentation." Murmurs ran through the studio audience, and the first few tweets of outrage appeared on screens across the country. Crockett took a breath, her tone unwavering. "What the numbers actually indicate is," she allowed her pause to punctuate the statement, forcing him to either let her finish or appear even more disruptive. The first wave of viral clips began circulating, highlighting the unusual calm under fire. Interruptions 6 through 10 escalated. Further, Levin's volume rose, his gestures more theatrical, attempting to assert dominance through aggression. "You're ignoring the facts. This is basic knowledge." Crockett responded with careful precision, parsing his claims calmly, correcting misstatements, and framing her argument in a way that highlighted logic over theatrics. Each time he tried to cut her off, she anticipated the interruption, slowing her delivery just enough to maintain control of the floor. The audience leaned forward, captivated, sensing a new kind of tension, the hero refusing to yield under relentless pressure. By the 12th interruption, social media was ablaze. Hashtags like #Crockett.com and #Levin interrupted trended instantly. Snippets looping endlessly on TikTok and Twitter. Levin's frustration became more apparent, his confidence faltering slightly with each failed attempt to drown her voice. He jabbed at her policies, tried to provoke anger, and even questioned her experience, but Crockett's responses were measured, each word carefully chosen to maintain composure while exposing flaws in his logic. Interruptions 13 through 17 were almost rhythmic, a battle of endurance. Levin attempted sarcasm, tried speaking over her repeatedly, and even smirked at moments he assumed would shake her. But Crockett continued, pacing her words with deliberate timing, allowing the audience to register both his frustration and her unwavering poise. Each interruption he attempted became less effective, more visibly futile. The studio murmurs turned to audible whispers of admiration. Even commentators who had defended Levin paused to recognize her mastery of the moment. And then came the 18th interruption. Levin, red-faced and exasperated, cut in with a pointed accusation. "You clearly don't understand the implications here." Silence followed as the room collectively held its breath. Crockett, taking a deliberate moment, let the weight of his words settle before responding, not with anger, but with a calm clarity that seemed to fill the studio. Her pause was deliberate. Her subsequent words were measured, confident, and unwavering. Cameras caught every micro-expression, the audience leaning in, commentators scribbling notes frantically, the tension hanging so thick it could almost be felt, the rhythm of interruptions, the rising crescendo of frustration, the audience's growing empathy, it all built to a singular moment. The storm Levin had thought he commanded was losing its shape. Hero's composure was not just holding it, was dominating. Every interruption he launched now served to highlight his unraveling, and every calm, precise reply from Crockett reinforced her authority. Then came the moment that would flip the entire narrative on live TV would never be the same. Crockett's eyes met Levin's, steady and unflinching, as if daring him to try again. She inhaled deeply, a slow, deliberate breath that seemed to absorb the tension in the room. The studio lights glimmered against the polished desk, cameras capturing every nuance, every micro-expression. This was the pause before the storm, a cinematic moment of anticipation that had the audience on edge, both in the studio and across millions of screens at home. Levin, still brimming with aggressive energy, leaned forward for another interruption, but this time he met resistance he had never anticipated. "I've listened to your claims," Crockett began, her voice calm yet resonant, cutting through the residual tension like a scalpel. "But let's ground this discussion in facts, in experience, and in the realities faced by the communities we serve." Her words were measured, carefully paced, each syllable chosen to convey authority without a hint of anger. She gestured, subtly, palms open, inviting rather than challenging, yet the command in her tone made the room instinctively pay attention. Levin opened his mouth to interject, but she continued unbroken, her calm presence absorbing and deflecting every attempted interruption. The audience reacted almost audibly, murmurs of approval and surprise weaving through the studio. Eyes widened. As the logic of her argument unfolded, a seamless narrative that juxtaposed policy understanding, lived experience, and ethical clarity. Cameras cut to close-ups. Viewers caught the glint of admiration in the eyes of studio spectators, the tight grip of hands slowly relaxing and the subtle shift of leaning forward, all while being captivated. Each pause, each deliberate hand gesture reinforced the rhythm of control that Crockett had built. She wasn't just responding. She was orchestrating a masterclass in composure under fire. Levin's initial smirk began to falter. With each calm rebuttal, his attempts to dominate the dialogue seemed increasingly futile. His eyes darted, searching for leverage that wasn't there. A subtle twitch of frustration revealed cracks in the confident facade he had carried for decades. The interruptions, that once intimidated and silenced seasoned guests, now highlight his unraveling. Every time he tried to regain control, Crockett's poised interjections neutralized his aggression, leaving him exposed and increasingly humiliated in plain sight. The social media reaction was instantaneous. Clips of Crockett's measured takedown exploded online. #Crockett.com. #Levin silenced, and #debate mastery trended within minutes. Memes surfaced highlighting the contrast between Levin's flailing gestures and Crockett's serene composure. One clip looped endlessly, Levin leaning forward aggressively, Crockett pausing mid-breath, and the audience's collective gasp. Commentators, both on-air and online, struggled to contain astonishment. Pundits known for their neutrality admitted begrudgingly that the debate had shifted irreversibly. Tweets cascaded. "Never seen composure like this on live TV. This is a masterclass in staying unshaken." Crockett just rewrote the rules of debate. Crockett's logic was devastatingly compelling. She dismantled each of Levin's points with precision, referencing legislation, historical precedent, and real-world impact in ways that left no room for empty rhetoric. She highlighted contradictions in his arguments without derision, exposing flaws in a calm and methodical manner. Each revelation landed like a strategic strike, amplified by the silence that followed from Levin, who could only sputter in disbelief. The juxtaposition between arrogance and measured intelligence became a spectacle, a moral and intellectual triumph broadcast live. The room's energy shifted palpably. Viewers at home felt the momentum swing. Even casual observers couldn't ignore the dominance of a calm, intelligent voice over a torrent of aggression. The studio audience leaned in, some whispering affirmations, others nodding in quiet approval. Every failed interruption Levin attempted now served as a reminder of Crockett's control. Each carefully chosen word she spoke reinforced the emotional truth. Arrogance cannot withstand dignity. Intellect cannot overpower resolve. The heroism in her composure inspired a collective catharsis, a sense of justice unfolding in real time. Crockett punctuated her counterattack with one final, deliberate pause, a cinematic beat so perfectly timed that it seemed to suspend reality. Levin, red-faced and increasingly desperate, attempted one last interruption, only to be met with silence that carried far more weight than any retort. The audience felt the tension crack, a wave of recognition that something historic was occurring. The debate was no longer merely an exchange of ideas. It had transformed into a symbolic clash of values: integrity versus arrogance, preparation versus bluster, calm versus chaos. Social media erupted further, this time with a mix of astonishment and celebration. Animated GIFs of Crockett's measured gestures went viral. Clips titled "Calm versus Chaos" dominated trending pages. Influencers and political commentators alike debated in real time. Have we ever seen a takedown this disciplined? Crockett just redefined the art of debate. Even late-night hosts began scripting segments around the spectacle, framing it as an unforgettable cultural and political moment. The narrative had shifted irrevocably. Levin was no longer the authority in the room Crockett was. And yet, what resonated most wasn't just the effectiveness of her argument, it was the example she set. Viewers saw a woman confronting relentless aggression without losing her composure, illustrating that true strength lies in restraint, in intellect, and an unwavering dignity. The emotional impact was immediate. People felt empowered, inspired, and validated. Her victory wasn't just political, it was emblematic. It's a moment that transcended the studio and became a lesson in moral and rhetorical excellence. As the clock ticked down, the final seconds of her response were delivered with precision, the crescendo of calm defeating chaos. Cameras captured audience members leaning forward, their hands clutched in awe, as whispers turned into audible appreciation. Levin slumped slightly, visibly deflated, his previous confidence now replaced by an uncharacteristic silence. Crockett's quiet authority had done what no one expected. She had rewritten the power dynamic in the room, claiming the debate with intellect, strategy, and integrity. As the debate concluded, the nation held its breath, witnessing a historic moment in the realm of political discourse. The moment the debate concluded, the ripple effect was instantaneous. Within minutes, clips of Crockett's calm and methodical dismantling of Levin's interruptions were flooding social media platforms. Twitter feeds erupted with hashtags like #Crockett.com, #LevinSilenced, and #DebateMastery, each tag multiplying the reach of the moment across the globe. Short-form video platforms, particularly TikTok, were inundated with looped highlights. Crockett's measured pauses, her precise hand gestures, the faint but unmistakable look of frustration on Levin's face. Even casual viewers, scrolling through their feeds without prior interest in political debates, paused to watch and share the video. Late-night commentary shows immediately picked up the story, replaying clips with an incredulous tone. Hosts dissected her arguments, analyzing not only the substance, but the sheer mastery of presence and timing. "We've never seen composure like this on live TV," one commentator admitted, leaning into the astonishment that resonated with audiences nationwide. Panels of political analysts debated endlessly. Some praised her intellect and restraint. Others marveled at her ability to neutralize aggression without raising her voice. Levin's reputation as an unstoppable force was suddenly under scrutiny. The narrative had shifted in a matter of hours. The celebrity response was equally swift and widespread. Public figures and influencers across various spheres of actors, musicians, activists posted reactions. Clips of Crockett's calm confidence were shared with admiration. "This is how you handle power." One tweet read, "Poise under pressure unmatched." Another post highlighted the symbolic resonance. A reminder that intelligence and dignity are louder than shouting and arrogance. Social media platforms have become a collective stage for both celebration and reflection, as people from all walks of life engage in conversations about leadership, respect, and accountability. Political circles felt the shockwaves immediately. Campaign strategists and advisors watched the viral content with keen interest. Crockett's performance had not only won her a public moment, it had also reshaped the dialogue around her role in Congress and elevated her national profile. Analysts predicted that the viral debate clips could sway public opinion, particularly among young progressive voters seeking leaders who embodied integrity, calm, and intellect. Levin, once seen as an untouchable authority, now faced scrutiny, not only from viewers but from political commentators and peers, who began questioning the sustainability of his dominance in public discourse. The ripple effect extended to ordinary citizens as well. Viewers on the ground shared personal stories, connecting Crockett's composure to their own struggles. Immigrant communities, minority voters, and young professionals expressed pride in validation, seeing a leader who navigated systemic challenges with intelligence and dignity. Social media threads became spaces for reflection and inspiration, as people discussed how the moment exemplified the power of preparation, resilience, and moral courage. Memes and hashtags proliferated not just for entertainment, but as symbols of identity and shared values, an online collective applause, echoing far beyond the studio walls. Educational and civic organizations quickly leveraged the clips to illustrate lessons in leadership, debate strategy, and effective communication. Teachers and mentors shared segments in classrooms and workshops, emphasizing how composure could outperform aggression in high-stakes environments. The narrative was no longer just about a political clash. It had evolved into a cultural touchstone, offering guidance and inspiration for anyone navigating pressure, bias, or intimidation. Even mainstream media coverage framed the moment as historic. News outlets replayed the most pivotal interactions repeatedly, highlighting how Crockett had transformed a series of interruptions into a demonstration of calm authority. Public discourse, from podcasts to editorial pages, focused on the implications a rising leader demonstrating that strength was not measured in volume or aggression, but in clarity, discipline, and unwavering poise, across platforms and communities. The debate became shorthand for the triumph of intellect and dignity. Over arrogance and bluster, the emotional impact was undeniable. Audiences felt pride in witnessing a leader embody values they themselves held dear: patience, intelligence, resilience, and fairness. Admiration and empowerment spread organically, creating a collective sense that change was possible, not just in policy or politics, but in the culture of discourse itself. People shared clips with captions like, "This is the kind of leadership we need," and finally, "A voice that doesn't shout to be heard." The moment became both a spectacle and a moral lesson, a vivid demonstration that principled action could inspire an entire nation. But beyond the headlines, the real story was far more profound. In the quiet aftermath of the viral storm, the more profound lesson of the debate began to crystallize. What Crockett had achieved was more than a single victory over a formidable opponent. It was a demonstration of timeless values that resonate far beyond the realm of politics. Poise, dignity, patience, and truth, the pillars of authentic leadership, had emerged triumphant over arrogance, bluster, and unchecked aggression. The spectacle of the debate had captivated audiences, but its moral resonance lingered long. After the cameras stopped rolling, Crockett's performance illuminated the extraordinary power of composure. Under pressure, her calm wasn't passive. It was deliberate, strategic, and rooted in experience. Each carefully chosen word and measured pause revealed that true strength is often invisible until it is put to the test in confrontation. In contrast to Levin's interruptions in volume, her restraint became her weapon, her intellect, her shield, and her dignity, her authority. The audience didn't just witness a debate, they saw the embodiment of a principle: that a calm, grounded voice can dismantle chaos and command respect in ways that shouting never can. The impact reached far beyond the studio or the televised moment. Leaders, activists, and citizens alike were inspired by her example. In classrooms, boardrooms, and civic forums, people replayed her strategy as a blueprint for effective leadership, as a reminder that courage under fire is not measured by loudness, but by clarity, foresight, and unwavering commitment to values. Representation mattered here too. Crockett's presence, her calm mastery, and her ability to navigate a hostile environment reflected the experiences of countless individuals who had faced systemic bias and silencing. Her triumph became symbolic of the power inherent in voices that had long been overlooked or dismissed. The debate also reframed what it means to confront conflict. In a society often captivated by spectacle, it's easy to mistake volume for authority. Crockett's example shattered that illusion. Through patience, reasoned argument, and unshakable calm, she redefined the rules of engagement. Audiences saw that restraint does not equate to weakness. Composure does not equate to passivity. Instead, it represents mastery, foresight, and integrity, qualities that leave a lasting impression far stronger than any momentary outburst. Emotionally, the moment's crescendo resonated deeply. Viewers felt a sense of validation, pride, and empowerment. For immigrant communities, minority voters, and those who had long been underestimated, Crockett's example offered a mirror of their own potential, proof that preparation, perseverance, and principle could turn even the most hostile confrontation into a platform for influence. For political observers, it was a reminder that character, intelligence, and strategy can upend expectations, disrupt norms, and have a lasting impact. Crockett's victory was not merely tactical, it was symbolic. It demonstrated that the essence of leadership is not in silencing others, but in commanding respect through substance and integrity. In moments of chaos, the calm voice does not merely survive, it thrives, shaping outcomes, shifting perceptions, and inspiring action. Her performance became a rallying cry for those who value measured courage over impulsive reaction, proof that poise and dignity are transformative forces capable of redefining narratives, elevating discourse, and influencing the course of public life. And so the reflection was clear. In a world dominated by shouting, interruptions, and performative aggression, the quiet, disciplined voice carries the most weight. When integrity meets opportunity, patience becomes a source of power, composure becomes a mark of authority, and truth becomes unstoppable. Crockett's example reminds us that leadership is not about overpowering others, It is about elevating the conversation, upholding values, and demonstrating that courage can coexist with order. Ultimately, the debate was more than a clash of personalities. It was a demonstration of timeless principles. It taught that poise, dignity, patience are not just admirable traits, they are instruments of influence, capable of shaping outcomes far greater than the immediate moment. And as audiences reflected on what they had witnessed, one truth became undeniable. In the quiet power of the calm voice, the future of leadership and representation is being redefined. One poised response at a time. Levin's aggressive interruptions had defined his reputation for decades, but in this debate, his dominance was undone by a single extraordinary presence, Jasmine Crockett. 18 attempts to derail her arguments. 18 moments meant to intimidate, and yet her calm, measured, and unwavering composure not only held firm, but redefined the narrative entirely. What the nation witnessed was more than a political exchange. It was a masterclass in dignity, intellect, and strategic courage. The video title says it all. Levin interrupts Jasmine Crockett. 18 times, her calm response ends his career on live TV. That moment of triumph is now etched into public memory. Now, it's your turn to be part of the conversation. Share this story with friends, family, and colleagues. Comment below with your thoughts on how Crockett's composure challenged the norms of political discourse. Hit like if you believe calm, reasoned voices should prevail over arrogance and chaos. Subscribe to our channel to witness more moments where courage, discipline, and intellect reshape the public stage. Every click, every share, every conversation helps amplify examples of leadership and integrity in action. Ultimately, the lesson is universal. Courage and composure speak louder than interruptions. It's not the loudest voice in the room that wins, it's the one grounded in truth, resilience, and unwavering poise. To lead, not follow, and to inspire, not intimidate. This is the kind of leadership that changes the game, uplifts communities, and leaves an enduring impact. Join us and witness how calm strength continues to make history, one poised response at a time.